All these rejections from the middle Bollinger Band.
Resistance we're going to need.
If you actually see here, we get
And we'll look for a healthy higher
I
low.
would not
don't have
be
the
eager
bullseye
to
across
enter
the
a long
structure.
trade.
Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. It's a fine Sunday out there. We're going to be looking at a bunch of altcoins, BTC, ETH, and then all these altcoins are listed in order of what received the highest votes from our members. So ETC, IOT, NEO, XRP, ONT, BNB, and OMG. First off, I want to talk about this new ETN that is now open on US markets. It's been trading in Sweden for a while. Mark Cuban a while ago purchased through the Sweden exchange, but now it's available to the US. So people are comparing, what's the difference between the ETFs and the ETN? Obviously, Google is great for that. What's the difference between an ETF and an ETN? But the biggest difference is that the ETF is backed by holding the actual Bitcoin and the ETN is not. It's backed by likely a bank and by debt. So what that means is you can buy all the CXBTF, that's the ticker. You can buy all of that in the world and it's not going to move the price of Bitcoin. Well, maybe in the sense that people will see it going up and then they'll, arbitrage and buy some Bitcoin, but in the sense that it's not directly leading to any buying of Bitcoin. So that's why everybody cares about this ETF, because they think that that is going to be the spark for the shift in momentum for the bulls to get back in control. And that is my opinion as well, because again, I see this information. It's great. I will use this instrument. If I see Bitcoin going up, I will probably rather trade this than our current GBTC option to trade on the stock exchange because of liquidity and things like that. But again, it's not going to make me buy Bitcoin because this thing is now trading in the US. It's going to be a nice gauge. We can see what kind of interest the market is going to have. I can see just on the second day of trading here, obviously it has not been trading long, but 100,000 shares at $32. So there's a few $1 million being traded. So that's worth keeping an eye on, how much dollar volume is going on in this instrument. But again, the catalyst for an ETF is the first wave. If it gets approved, it's the first wave of everybody buying Bitcoin, anticipating that the ETF is then going to have to buy Bitcoin to back any of the shares bought of that ETF. So it is a very big difference, but I will be keeping an eye on CXBTF from now on. Bitcoin on the weekly time frame, still trying to hold this support level, still trying to see some follow through on this bounce. Our range on the weekly time frame is very clear, and at this point it's about a $2,700 range that we're currently in. So we need to see bull follow through to see an equilibrium. Right now the bears absolutely still have favor on the daily and weekly time frame. There is no doubt about that. No matter how you want to cut it as a bull, the bulls have not done enough to prove any kind of strength at this point in time. They held support, absolutely, but we do need to see follow through into at least the low 7,000 range for this weekly equilibrium to begin shaping up. The daily time frame, we can see we're still struggling with these exponential resistances. We've topped out multiple times now, 66.33, 66.36, and just recently 66.13. So very clearly the bulls are struggling in this range. Have to break that level. Our support at this point is down at 5,900. So we have a daily range to be watching and a weekly range to be watching. And the bulls right now trying to see this bull break to get to that 7,000 level. If we pull back into this coming week, as the week is about to wrap up tonight, we're going to look for a higher low. That's going to be the only chance the bulls have. So again, we're in a scenario where the burden of proof is on the bulls. It's been that way for quite some time. At this point, you can still make the argument that this is a daily bear flag, where we have just a channel of a weak bounce attempt where the bulls haven't been able to do a whole lot in terms of shifting momentum. And this is obviously a very rough drawing, but at this point, that could be called a bear flag. So we have to remain cautious, and the bears are remaining comfortable at this point. If I'm a bear right now, I'm saying to myself, I have absolutely nothing to worry about. If 66.36 breaks, that's when I start to shift and say, okay, bulls are proving something, and then reestablish a game plan. So 4-hour time frame, things getting tight. Some people looking at the potential of this being a little 4-hour head and shoulders pattern. If we see a break of 63.12, that tells us that daily consolidation is underway, and that's the scenario where the bulls are going to have to find that higher low. Otherwise, we're heading back down towards 6,000. So key 4-hour support, and this is just a nice example where, depending on the time frame you're watching, depending on the trade you're looking to take or are already in, I have a weekly range to be watching, I have a daily range to be watching, or if I want shorter term, I have a 4-hour range to be watching. Every single time frame has a bunch of candlesticks inside it, so we're watching for breaks of all of these channels. This 4-hour channel, 63.12 support and 64.65 resistance. When we break the 4-hour channel, we can zoom out to the daily, watch that channel, zoom out to the weekly and watch that channel. So just like we do on these trends and on these exponential moving averages, constantly zooming out or zooming in depending on what we're looking at, we can do the same thing with channels and ranges of price action that we're trading within. And we know nothing's going to happen until this channel breaks. I could care less what Bitcoin does while it's within this channel. Let me know what happens when this channel breaks. That's what I'm interested in. ETH on the weekly time frame to start. So trying for that bullish reversal candlestick. We know we're not going to change that weekly trend anytime soon. The daily chart absolutely could still be a bear flag at this point. Although the size of the bounce, we would anticipate that the bulls would at least be able to put up a higher low and an equilibrium before a bear break if we are to break bearish. So the range on the daily, 250.28, and resistance is 322.16, and the 4-hour is tighter, where we are currently watching the range between 283.10 up to 307.65. So we did see some nice ETH action that Bitcoin bulls did not see right before the pullback, but again, pullback lining up with that Bitcoin correlation, and we have nice daily inside bars forming on both Bitcoin and Ethereum. So we're going to look for these daily inside bars to break tomorrow. And these candlesticks are closing up in just a few hours, perhaps 3 more hours or so. So we should see that break tomorrow. ETC USD getting a lot of attention with the listing on Coinbase. The weekly time frame, the bulls did buy the dip pretty significantly, but we're not changing this trend anytime soon on ETC. Anything under 21.25 is a lower high. That's a 50% move just to hit the lower high. So we know that trend is not changing on the weekly chart. The daily time frame does have a chance to change this trend. So we just topped out. We knew a lower high was coming. There's no doubt about that because of the size of the dump. So our bullish reversal candlestick, lower high being set on the daily, and we are going to look for a higher low to form. And again, either a continuation move or an equilibrium. So bulls have some nice comfortability on at least the daily chart to see where we're going to establish this new support level. It's currently at 1258. If that breaks, the odds of an equilibrium rather than just a continuation move will increase significantly. So that short-term support is important for that reason. Daily inside bar, likely to break tomorrow, pretty tight range. And again, we can choose this 4-hour range to be watching from 1258 up to 1378. So a nice, it's healthy consolidation at this point. There's no red flag on this pullback. It's declining volume. Best case scenario for the bulls is a bull break of the inside bar to head back up to the recent high of 1492. And like I said, if we get the bear break, an equilibrium is more likely than not, judging by the size of the range of the bounce and then of the pullback. IoT USD on the weekly time frame, bullish reversal candlestick as well. Again, not going to change this trend anytime soon. That's pretty much the scenario on the vast majority of altcoins. Nice bounce, absolutely. Big gains for the bulls on those bounces, but they don't have enough momentum or follow through to change trends. So they are short term, and bulls need to be cautious for that reason. And that's where a lot of people get in a lot of trouble. People that aren't familiar with technical analysis, and they look to buy into weakness and average down or whatever their game plan is. But if you wait and see a bounce on a downtrend, so this bounce right here, just on IoT as an example, we dumped to 40, and here we are at 55. So that's a very significant bounce. That's a 30+% bounce. And you might say to yourself, the bottom's in. You know, we've bounced 30%. That's it. I'm missing my chance. I got to go in right now. And then we bounced and we set just another lower high, and then we dropped down to lower lows. And that's when continued bear trends just follow their trend and play out. But people are trying to average down into bear trends, and it just doesn't work out most of the time. So that's why I like to give up some reward by not trying to nail the bottom, waiting for trend changes like we did in Canadian MJ back a year ago, and then getting in once we know that the momentum has shifted. And yes, I gave up the chance for some profit by not trying to nail the bottom, but I eliminated a ton of risk by waiting for the trend to be in my favor. So the daily time frame on IoT, solid bounce and a solid day today. So just looking at today, I can compare it to the other names and say IoT has had a more bullish day than any of the names that we've looked at so far. That's a solid green candle. Just looking at Bitcoin, it's a little weak green candle. So that is a little notable difference. We have the low of 40 cents. We have the high of 575, and it's pretty much a triple top at this point. And you can see, I can see that because we have higher lows heading into that triple top, that it's pretty much going to look like an ascending triangle. So we have the resistance, our pullback of support, which is a 4-hour higher low, a double top of resistance, and the bulls are going to look to pull back and form another higher low. At this point, the cup and handle psychology is here, absolutely. Left side of resistance, we pull back, we are unable to break resistance, and we form a healthy handle of consolidation before the breakup or the breakout, and we're going to be looking for that potential possibility if the current 4-hour candlestick, well, actually we have a long way to go. I was going to say if it gives us an inside bar and then we get a bull break, but we might get that bull move, the bull attempt up at that resistance before that candlestick closes to form an inside bar. So the bottom line is, let's keep an eye on this 4-hour and see if we get that cup and handle. If we get a bull break over 575, next clear resistance level, I'm looking at 6.4 and then up to 6.74. And that's just looking at previous resistance on the 4-hour time frame. And what that would do on the daily chart is give us a little stutter step and then continuation move with a solid bounce. So notable strength on IoT. Let's see if we can get that follow through. But this is the kind of scenario, again, where the bulls are comfortable in the short term because we know best case scenario, cup and handle. Worst case scenario, we pull back unless, of course, there's some kind of news event or something like that. But worst case scenario, aside from that, would be pulling back and looking for a higher low and just a 4-hour equilibrium that's going to play out into tomorrow or potentially Tuesday. NEO on the weekly time frame, bullish reversal candlestick. Again, not changing this trend anytime soon. Solid volume climax on the weekly time frame indicating the bounce is underway, but the daily chart has work to do. Another one that showed some strength today, tested resistance, but was unable to break it. So at this point, the range is 1368 up to 2098, which is a double top. Same thing. See the higher lows? So the 4-hour time frame for NEO is very similar to IoT. Potential of a little cup and handle pattern, although we pulled back a little bit more from that resistance, and we're looking for a higher low to form. Bulls would love if that higher low was 1874. Not convinced that it is just yet, but we know the key support is the low of this 4-hour consolidation of 1759. So very similar setup. And again, if you're newer to charts and technical analysis, these are the kind of plays that you want to watch and learn, or watch and put it in your memory banks. How did this play out? And that's something that has definitely had a lot of value for me over the years. I've looked at, I dare say, hundreds of thousands of charts at this point, but at least tens of thousands of charts. And watching how they play puts these odds in my head. You know, obviously I'm not calculating every single one, but it gives me a general sense. Do these patterns more likely break bullish? Do they more often break bearish? And it's this recall where I can say, oh, I remember this chart that looked like this, and that's how it ended up playing out. And obviously, again, I'm not doing that consciously on the fly with some kind of, photographic memory or anything like that, but it just gives you a sense of things and you get accustomed to them and you get used to them. So these two patterns, very similar to each other. I'd be keeping an eye on NEO and IoT to see how these 4-hour charts play out. Ripple, bullish reversal candlestick on the weekly, lower high at 52.46. Not going to change the trend anytime soon. Daily chart, inside bar. This looks a little bit more like Bitcoin because we are not up at resistance like those other two names just were, but the size of the bounce is significant. So we will anticipate a higher low on any pullback. This bounce went from 24.6 up to 37.4. Very significant bounce, about a 50% bounce, and now we're seeing multiple inside bars. So we know an equilibrium is forming on the shorter term time frames. That's what daily inside bars tell us. And if we look at the hourly chart, I actually like it a little bit more clear on the 4-hour. So the 4-hour high, low, lower high, and we're looking for a higher low potentially at 3.3. So the difference between these patterns, these three that we just looked at, the first two had a test of resistance and a double top, and they are closer to breaking that resistance than XRP is. So while those are more like cup and handles, this is more like a standard old equilibrium, and it's going to require a little bit more work for the bulls. And I would say that we're pulling back like this because of how much we ran up. So if Ripple ran up harder than those other names and pulled back a little bit harder, that's why we're not seeing the same test of resistance. Just little miniature differences. When I'm looking at these charts and I'm comparing them to each other, I'm looking at why they're different and what might be the cause of it. And I would say that the size of the initial bounce led to further pullback. The harder you run, the more you pull back, and that's why we're getting this equilibrium pattern right now. The tightest range is 333, just rounding a bit, and resistance is 352. So there's our tighter range, but if we see this bear break of this support level, I'd still call it an equilibrium because we have not confidently established this higher low and seen follow through just yet. That would be best case for the bulls. A break of 3522 to have us looking back at 37418 resistance. So at this point, these altcoins, the three that we've just looked at, still have some fire in them. They still have some life and some potential for follow through. If Bitcoin's charts looked like this, I would be more bullish, but it doesn't. ONT USD. So not a whole lot of price history here on ONT USD, but we have enough to look at the shorter term time frames. We know the weekly chart, obviously, not changing the trend anytime soon. The daily chart, solid bounce off the lows, and now we're looking for an inside bar to form. So again, a very strong bounce. We pulled back a bit harder, so we don't have the same cup and handle pattern. We haven't made our way back to that resistance. And just again to compare real quick for myself, moves on the daily chart. So you can see that's the reason, in my opinion. The bounce for IoT and NEO on the daily chart, much smaller comparative to the size of the bounce for Ripple and ONT. And just want to see the percentage here on ONT. And we're looking up at very significant 175% move. So congrats to those bulls that got that bounce. Certainly pays to wait and be patient. And we'll see how this 4-hour tightening pattern plays out. Support is at 1776. And resistance hasn't been clearly set yet. We are going to be looking for a lower high to form, but we're just trading sideways right now with inside bars and tightening ranges. And resistance is 243, followed by 288. And support the bulls are trying to maintain inside bar support is 218.6. So I would be watching for a lower high to be set. Maybe it's set now if we get a bear break. If we don't and we get a bull break, we're still going to be looking for a lower high to be set. But again, another name that is much stronger than Bitcoin just on the daily time frame, looking at the last 3-4 days, is the comparison that we're looking at right now in these shorter term time frames. BNB. Ever since the bear break of the weekly time frame on BNB, noticing that the correlation to Bitcoin is picking up. And there was a really long period of time where we had a weekly uptrend and Bitcoin obviously did not. And it was almost like BNB was the savior of the correlation. We weren't tied down like an anchor to Bitcoin with everybody else in the space. And now I'm seeing more correlation with Binance and Bitcoin than I've seen in a long time. And if I were a Binance bull, that would make me a little bit bummed because Bitcoin obviously is in downtrends on the daily and weekly time frame. So just looking at the daily chart, this bounce that has played out, it doesn't have the strength of those other names that we just looked at. It has a similar chart to Ethereum and Bitcoin. So I would distinguish things right now between Bitcoin, Ethereum, and names that had a solid bounce, but not anything, crazy. This bounce was 27, 28%. So I'd pretty much distinguish names that have bounced 20 to 35%, and anybody that bounced more than 35%. And let's just get a quick reminder on what Bitcoin's percentage bounce was from low to high. And we're talking 12%. So not even close. So that would be how I would determine names. Who's had a weaker bounce, who's had the strongest bounces, looking at the percentages. So for BNB, daily inside bar is very likely, just like Bitcoin. We're not close to resistance, just like Bitcoin, as those other names are close to resistance. And on the 4-hour time frame, we have a tightening range that looks a lot more like Bitcoin than those other names do. Support is 945 and resistance is 1030 in the short-term time frames as to what to be watching heading into tonight. And we'll wrap it up now with OMG USD. Again, not changing weekly trends anytime soon, but the daily chart, decent little bounce. I would put this in the weaker categories of the bounce. Confirm it just looking at the range. 40%, all right, so that's on the cusp. That's getting into the stronger size of the bounce. And you want to double check because visually sometimes these things can be misleading depending on, how much they dumped before and what the y-axis represents. So it's a little bit of a stronger bounce than Bitcoin. We have an inside bar forming, just like Bitcoin, tightening 4-hour range, more so of an equilibrium than those cup and handle patterns. And I would be watching the range right now, higher low looking to be established at 397 and resistance of 434. That's the tight range of this 4-hour equilibrium. And why am I not confident that our higher low has been established yet? Because this candlestick is an inside bar, and if it continued down, I would still consider this the same move, just a little sideways hesitation and then continuation down. So I would not say it is a bear break if 397 breaks. I would say we have not established our higher low yet. That's where we are. Let's check back in on Bitcoin real quick. 15-minute chart, trying to see some love for the bulls. Have to see a bull break of 64.65 to even be considering resistances. Back up in the 6600s. Let's see if the bulls can pull that off. I'm watching these exponential moving averages on the 4-hour as well. We saw the bull cross for the first time since this pullback from 8,000s. And now the bulls are trying to fend off a bear cross. So I'm going to keep an eye on the ETN from here on out. I'm going to watch that dollar volume. I'll see if there's any trading opportunity. I assume it's going to take a little bit for the correlation to pick up relative to Bitcoin. I'm going to be watching for that as well. And we will continue to check back in on Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all these other names. This daily chart. So I've been pointing out in the past 3 days how these setups have been telling me nothing's really going to happen anytime soon unless there's a new surprise. The chart is tightening. We have wide ranges that we're going to be trading within for a while. The 4-hour time frame, the bulls aren't proving anything to me. So I said that that was a signal for me to look up elsewhere, not put my attention on Bitcoin. But likewise, now I'm getting the signals to start putting my attention on Bitcoin again. The tighter we get, the more attention you want to pay. So we had a big range. We were consolidating within that big range. I said we're going to tighten up for a while. But now, heading into Monday, I'm definitely interested in which direction the inside bar breaks. And I'm interested if the bulls are going to be able to break this double top. So that just goes to show that, patterns can give you an indication on time frame. When do I need to start paying attention more? Things like that. So I hope you all continue to do good things out there. Story time, and then we'll wrap it up with a quickie video. But had a reminder with it's lobster season here in Florida. And had a reminder that I used to work a job as a lobsterman, and that was back, at this point, 15 years ago. So I was in high school, a sophomore in high school, and I had a joke with one of my best buddies growing up where we went on a charter fishing trip once, and it was a terrible experience. The captain was a jerk, and just, it wasn't kid friendly. So he said, all right, we need to start a charter business where we just fish all day, and it's a kid friendly boat. We got balloons on it and all that. And that was a joke we had for a few years. And his dad got word of it, and his dad was an entrepreneur. So his dad bought a little boat and a lobstering license and like 300 traps. And we lived in this, town that was upper class white. And he put these lobster traps up against his house, stacked them, they're stacked 30 feet high, and so many of them. I can only imagine how furious his neighbors were, which was hysterical. But we would wake up every morning or every other morning at 5 in the morning, drive out. This was the hardest job I've ever done in my life, aside from farming, which took the title back in Maine. But up to that point in time, waking up at 5, we were hauling trawls of traps. So the traps, you have a big old trap, and then you have maybe 30 feet of line, and then another pot, and they're 3 to 5 long. So you go out, you hook the buoy, you put the thing on the rotor, it pulls it up, and you're hauling the traps out of the water. You open them up, you take the lobsters out, you put the bait in, you take the old bait out. So we were doing that and had a blast, but it was really hard work. But it was a really good experience to, get the lobsters and then go to different locations and see what prices they would be willing to pay us. So a little bit of business 101 early on, but just really funny memories of, we had this bait, and this bait was just rotting fish, and it would get its oil all over the deck. So we would be carrying these totes or these traps that would weigh, 40, 50 pounds. And I can remember just slipping on this juice and just the boat's going crazy in the waves, and it just landing straight on my chest, on my back. But you never, not many people are going to experience this, but 5 a.m. riding out on the boat, the smell of diesel fresh in the air, and the smell of rotting fish, while we're packing bait bags with these rotting fish. And every now and again, as the fish is going into the bait bag, you get a flick of the bait bag will flick back in your face, and you get some fish juice and some salt to preserve the rotting fish straight in your eyeball. And I'll never forget those moments. So the videos here at the end of the day, we've got just some quickie little animal videos. Getting to the bottom of the barrel on this road trip. We're going to wrap it up probably tomorrow. And then I need some new content. So need to get to Iceland, and going to be traveling around a bunch more in the coming years and in the coming months. And I'm going to have to be a camera guy. I've never really been a camera guy in terms of just instinct to have that camera. I have to keep reminding myself, and I keep going places and forgetting it. So I'll do my best. Have a great Sunday. We'll see you tomorrow.
We got you, buddy. You can't run now. Oh, he's gone.
Yeah, how we doing now?
Get up on there.
Get up on there, boy.
Yep. He looks bigger.
Yep. Oh, he's got a cub?
Yeah, the kid. I thought I saw a cub too. I'm not getting any closer.
Oh, dude, that's epic. You're right